The threat of piracy, it's not over. It's not gone away. It's here to stay. It's global. As we squeeze one part of the world, like we have in the Horn of Africa, with military warships, it's gone elsewhere. We had the Gulf of Guinea. There's the South China Sea, different areas. But what we have is that, how do we take care of it? What's going to happen? And there's some major inconsistencies that I want to bring for what's happening. It's people. It will be the shipping industry itself that solves piracy, because the industry always takes care of itself, and it will put pressure on the IMO, on flag states, etc., to implement what's needed. So let's see. Yeah, it's okay, it's slow. Well, what we're having is, look at this. This was taken from different parts. Research, there was one major insurance company that had done a look into this. And suddenly you start looking, and although we talk about, yes, we had in East Africa for the Gulf, the Horn of Africa, 3 years, 4 years there with high numbers. But look at the South China Sea over the time from 1996 right through to 2014, and the number of incidents that happened there. And it's time to forget this concept that pirates are poor fishermen or poor people have no other. Piracy is a complex international business model. There are so many factors and facets in it of people who are making a lot of money. And as time goes on, we're revealing more and more that piracy is linked to organized crime and to terrorism, and you can't get away from it. But this just shows you for where we're looking at. The Mediterranean Sea is there. There's been a few things. We will see a shift in that, because as the migrant crisis increases, and regrettably Greece is bearing the brunt of it, with no real help from the EU, which is needed to deal with this. But I'm not going to get into that, because that's not what this is about. But be aware that as we shift here and look at the various parts of the world, it is growing. And as people see that they can get away with it, the Horn of Africa, if we remove the warships, it'll be back within 3 months, and it'll be back worse than it ever was, because now we have the Yemen as a failed state, and Somalia is still a failed state, so you'll have gangs working from both sides of the Gulf of Aden against merchant ships. So, the piracy, the human rights of pirates, what an aberration. The Marine Executive, the 24th of December 2014, reported that the IMB is concerned over the decision to compensate pirates. I mean, the figures involved were about 9,000 euros each, because under the Convention of Human Rights, the European Convention, after they were detained, they hadn't been processed quick enough. So they had to get compensated. What about the victims? Nobody gives a damn. The companies do, because the crew have been abused and all the rest of it, but it could only happen in Europe. And now countries are having this new problem. Pirates that attack ships, then sit down and wait to be captured, then they're taken to the country in Europe, where they'll be processed. Because they're away from their families are then brought to that country to reside while the process of court and imprisonment is done. Then during imprisonment, they go through the process of getting their dual nationality of the country where they're imprisoned and their families, and then they live in Europe happily ever after. As I say, it could only happen in Europe. But, you know, it's absolutely ridiculous that we have such a thing. As I say, the human rights of the victims, not a penny. I mean, I won't go into details, but having dealt with so many acts of piracy and what's going on, what crew go through, the physical abuse, maiming, some murders, the stress, false executions that break people's spirit, etc. You just can't believe what's happening about it. But who cares? They're just the victims. We must take care of the perpetrator because these are poor people that need to be helped. But to me, it's time to stop this nonsense. It really is. If you engage in an act of piracy, you have stepped outside of the boundaries of a lawful society. Therefore, the law of society does not apply to you. Believe it or not, on the statute books of the United Kingdom, there is a rare convention that will never be used, but it's still there that for committing an act of piracy on the high seas, you can be hung. It's still there, but nobody wants to use it. But maybe it's not the right answer, but we sure as hell won't get pirates acting again if they've been removed permanently from the stat. But that's a personal view. But a rule of law is not working. Piracy in the future, what do we really do? Now, it's the industry that's going to take it, the ship owner. Do we build ships that are specifically built with systems to withstand piracy attack? Possibly we can do it. The technology is there, the systems are. Who has the money to invest all those additional millions in constructing the ship to make it so? Do we continue with armed guards on board? It's difficult to say, but no ship has been hijacked while having armed guards on board. So that supports it. And at this time, we're watching a change in the private armed security guards because we're reducing the number of companies. The good professional companies that meet the standards and are doing the job properly will remain and will be available. But do we now integrate, when we're doing the budgets for the ships, that we have to integrate the cost of private armed security guards being on board? As the table I showed earlier, show more and more areas. So do we have to carry armed guards a lot more times, a lot more many days at the costs involved for over the year? Or do we end up getting to the situation that we then have armed guards more or less as part of the crew permanently on board? And this raises another problem. But another option is, do we arm the ships and train the crews in weapons and have an army on board? Now, this would be difficult to do, as we would need to pass through the IMO and would change the status of ship types, because a merchant ship's a merchant ship. In time of war, it could become an armed merchant ship. But that would make a major change to SOLAS and the other conventions. Okay. So, seafarers' rights. This is something I've been dealing with at the IMO. Seafarers' rights. I thought seafarers were human beings, and so the Convention of Human Rights should apply to them. But it seems to be that we need to look very carefully about what goes on. But this is continuing through in the legal committee. A new type of seafarer, industrial personnel. This has been brought up, it's been going on for a couple of years now, and it's mainly to do at this time with the offshore wind farms, because the workboats going out, there's many wind farms now being outside national waters, so the vessels are engaged in international voyages, but we've stopped this because we already have, for this type of personnel, under Special Purpose Ships Code. So why do we start? Because once we start with industrial personnel, we'll then have, within a couple of years, another new type of personnel. And what is the structure for the qualifications for safety, etc., these people will have? Will it apply or does it not? Because they're not part of the crew complement, but they're not a passenger either. It's a bit of a minefield. Professional indemnity insurance is becoming more and more a matter of what the future comes for seafarers. Now, this I've worked on. It's not to go against P&I clubs. It's not to go against companies. In fact, I've been working with P&I and companies about this, but to give a proper set. Many times seafarers have been cut loose so that they're left, the ship's released, and they're left to their own devices. And to be quite honest, $250,000 is a conservative sum. So there's a new product coming on market soon. It's very low in cost by numbers. Companies can do it for their staff or associations, etc., which gives over $1 million to cover 1 year's full salary and a lot of other things as well. And it's going to be the part of the future. Criminalisation of seafarers. I've left out some DVDs. On the 9th or 10th of September, SAFETY4SEA put the link up. I've given the name here of Deirdre Fitzpatrick, the Executive Director. Any company, any person can ask for a number of original copies of this DVD. It'll be supplied to them free of charge. It's free for distribution to the people. So there we are, finished just over time. I've been told off, been given the red card by the whistle. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me. Thank you.